Well, hello, this is Peter Combs from Bidamount.com and P.O. Combs Asian Art in Gloucester, Massachusetts. And in this video, we're going to talk about strategies for navigating websites like Liveauctioneers, Invaluable and Bidsquare so that you don't get stuck buying a fake or a copy from one of these hundreds of sites out there that are selling nothing but these. And the way you have to think of it is this, is that if you were a buyer of European art and you came across an auction site that's running somewhere in the Midwest or in Georgia or someplace outside of the major markets in like New York, Paris, London by one of the major auction houses, and this auctioneer was claiming in his auction listings to have 6 Monets, 8 or 9 blue period paintings by Picasso, Cezanne's, Da Vinci's, all this sort of thing, what would you say? You'd say this is nonsense. Of course they're not authentic, all right? And the same rules apply to great Asian art, all right? I'm not saying you can't find really good things on Invaluable, Liveauctioneers, and Bidsquare. You certainly can. But the chances of buying a top-end imperial piece that's potentially worth into 6 and 7 figures for pennies on the dollar is almost zero. All right, it is. I'm going to say it is zero. Okay, it's a very difficult task to do, and trying to avoid fakes and copies and finding something that's authentic in the upper ends is a very difficult thing, especially if you're a dealer or a collector and you're trying to build your collection. Don't get trapped on one of these auctions that just get you, all right? And to find authentic things and to minimize your chances of getting burned, you need to work with very, very specific hard rules that you never violate, all right? And you must always keep in mind that rarities mean just that. They're rare. And it means they're highly desired by collectors and dealers all over the world. They do not turn up, frankly, often anywhere but in the hands of the large auction houses with decades of experience getting consignments from top dealers, institutions, and that sort of thing. In the entire world, roughly speaking, there are a dozen or so auction houses that have the qualifications and the market presence to realize top money for major collections, okay, in almost any category, and this includes Asian and Chinese art. All right, you know who they are. It's Christie's, Sotheby's, Tijan's, Bonham's, Guardian, these places. Okay, they get top money because they have credibility in the market. Important collections of Chinese art do not get consigned to minor league auction houses in the U.S. or anywhere, unless it's a total mistake and 1 or 2 pieces happen to slither in, but it's extremely rare, and it happens maybe once every 10 years or so. We all know the case of the lady, and it shows you the power of the major auction houses, the famous the lady in Paris a few years ago who had the Falun Kai vase with the garlic neck on it. It ended up selling for $17 million. She found it in her house. It was an old French family. It had come down to her. She didn't know what it was. She was cleaning out a closet. But even she knew, and she's not a collector, knew to take it right over to Sotheby's. She hopped on the train, did it, and the rest was history. $17 million later. It did very, very well. But that just shows you how improbable it is that a collector who's been active in the market, that has built up a big collection, is going to consign this stuff to minor auction houses. They're just not going to do it. They're going to want to pick somebody that's got great credibility in the market. All right. If you had a piece that was worth $1 million to $2 million, you're not going to give it over to Joe Doak's auctioneer with a lowball estimate and a lowball reserve. You're going to take it right to New York, and they'll be thrilled to get it. There is a myth out there, and I've heard it repeated, and it's ridiculous that there's some sort of collusion or cabal among the major auction houses, museums, and collectors and dealers to keep great things from getting into the major auction houses. This actually has been said by people. There's a fellow on the internet that has done videos about it. Some of you have seen them. And he has this, I think he's in New Jersey or somewhere. And he has a collection of not fake Ruware and fake Yuan pieces and fake Qing pieces. And he's always rambling on. He did a series of videos about how the big auction houses won't accept his pieces. The strange part is he can't provide provenance on one example. And everybody has rejected him. And if the stuff was legitimate, the dealers would be parachuting onto his roof with suitcases full of cash to buy the stuff. That's simply the fact of the matter. I've seen too many cases where people who have never done business with a big auction house consigned something based on a phone call and did very, very well. And collectors know about these companies, just as anybody does who's been collecting for more than a few weeks. So why would they send off to auction a carefully accumulated collection that's all authentic to anywhere but the major auction houses? They're simply not. But you can still find, without too much trouble, really great things that are not the major league pieces, but very, very good. All right. The other issue that makes it even worse nowadays is that a lot of the auction houses, even some well-established bricks and mortar auction houses that had good reputations, because of changes in the business, because the American furniture market fell apart years ago, the decorative European furniture market fell apart, they've had to get into other things. And one of the things that they've done is they've traded on their reputations by taking in a lot of fakes and copies. And this has become a huge, huge problem. And they've basically burned their reputations. They're just destroying their reputations to make a quick buck now to keep the lights on. All right, it's as simple. That's really what's happened. And the problem for them now is that if a collector did come along that heard they sold Asian art and looked at their website, they would know immediately that all these guys sell are fakes, and I'm not consigning my carefully curated collection to this guy because he has no credibility. Everybody knows he sells fakes. All right. And if you've looked at the report card on our global member pages, if you're a global member subscriber, you've seen that right now we have about 300 auctioneers on there. Out of the 300, only 8 of them get an A rating. And those are the major auction houses. We have about 23 that get a B rating, and the rest are C's and D's. And of that 300, 170 of them, I think it is, or 175 so far, get an F for selling fakes. All right, that's what they sell. They misrepresent them. They misidentify them. They get vague about what they are. They're all fakes. All right, and it's a big problem, and we don't expect to be adding a lot more A's onto that list anytime soon. We're going to be adding a lot of C's, D's, and F's, and maybe a few more B's, but that's about it. All right, and these guys forget. These auction houses are forgetting that they're just killing themselves by doing this. They won't have any reputations left by the time they're done. All right. Do things turn up that are great in local auction houses that handle legitimate estates on regional bases? Once in a blue moon they do, but not often. And if they did, it's the only thing in the sale that's rare. They're certainly not going to get 10 or 20 pieces because those people that own things like that will know what they are. All right, so the chances of something going under the radar, so to speak, at a minor league podunk auction house is almost zero. The other problem that you compete with, and you may not be aware of it, if you've come to an auction and you see that there's some really great looking things and there are no bids on them yet, and you think, I've discovered it. No, you haven't discovered it. A lot of sharp eyes are on the internet all the time. Tens of thousands of top collectors, top dealers scour the internet. Some of them even have staffs that scour the internet for them who've been trained what to look for. And those are the people you're competing against. You're competing against multi-generational dealers who handle top-of-the-line stuff. They have unbelievable, almost unlimited resources to authenticate things. And if something turns up on Invaluable, Liveauctioneers, or Bidsquare that's great, it's been seen. You're not the first person. I guarantee you did not discover an auction of sleepers, all right? There are too many sharp eyes out there. All right, so for something to go under the radar is pretty much a zero chance these days with the internet. Wasn't that way years ago. We went to rural auctions. Sometimes you got some great things, but those days are done. Those days are done, okay? And generally speaking, these collections always go to either a top-end auction house or a professional dealer. So when you see an auction online filled with objects of numerous and rare porcelain types, rare jades, rare paintings, those piles of Tibetan gilt bronzes, scholars' objects, alarm bells should be going off in your head right away, and say, no, this is not right. Because if they were real, they wouldn't be there. All right. It doesn't mean you won't find very good pieces there, but you won't be finding any Yuan blue and white jars. All right. Yuan-style blue and white jars of the greatest types have been turning up in live auctions on the internet right now for about 20 years. As soon as the internet came along, they began really mass producing them. I haven't seen a real one yet. in 20 years. And there's probably 10 to 20 a month on Liveauctioneers and Invaluable. They're all claiming to be Yuan or Market Period Young Lobels or Market Period Xuandi, Chenhua, all that. Market Period Qinlong Imperial Palace pieces, all that. No, unless it's one of the big auction houses, and they do use some of these sites. All right, you're also not going to find real Shang bronzes, the top ones on there, or great paintings, valuable paintings by 20th century contemporary masters. They're being Xeroxed in China right now. They're being copied by the boatload and shipped out in containers. All right, when it comes to things like porcelain, always ask yourself a simple question. If this is supposed to be a Qinlong Imperial vase, and you know that one just like it sold at Sotheby's for $400,000 with an estimate of $300,000 or $400,000, why is it being auctioned at this place with an estimate of $5,000 to $10,000 or $800 to $1,200? Why is that happening? It's happening for one reason. It's happening because it's a copy. All right, that's the only reason. All right, and it's a simple one. It's Occam's razor. So we're going to be going through some of these actual listings, looking at them, and sort of showing you how to flag them so you don't get sucked in and end up spending a lot of money for something that isn't any good. All right, so let's get started. So here we are, and where I want to start is I'm going to start over on one of the global pages, the global member pages that we have for Invaluable, just to give you an idea of what you typically see. And these are things that we've picked out from across the board on Invaluable, and we do it for Liveauctioneers and so forth. But you're going to see that there aren't any of these fabulous rarities that you're about to see in a few minutes that are purportedly being, offered. These purported rarities that are being offered down at other sites. They simply don't appear, and we don't include them. But this is the kind of things. These are the kind of things that you typically do see. You do see some very good export pieces. You do see some good Wan Li pieces. You see some nice Kangxi vases, good late Ming, Jiajing vases from time to time, rare paintings on copper, all this kind of thing. These are all lovely. But they're all the kinds of things that aren't quite good enough to make it into a major auction. So they end up being sold by other good-sized, reputable companies like Carlo Bonti and these places that will take them and sell them happily and have a good result for the seller. And you notice there are lots of dishes and bowls and cups and so on and so forth. And this page is fairly long. We're only down at about 15% at this point, but it'll give you some idea of what's out there. All right. And now if you come over to Liveauctioneers and see some of the things we've pulled, they all look like this. Same sort of thing. Nice-looking Ming pieces, nice-looking Wan Li pieces, all perfectly legitimate, decent transitional jar, and Kangxi wine coolers and so forth. Yixing. All right, that's the kind of thing that you're going to find on Liveauctioneers. Anything that's above that, and here's another page of things we have. Anything above that is going to be a fake. All right, and I'm going to illustrate it here with this company because I don't even know if they're in business anymore. Some of you may remember them. This was the Wichita Auctioneers, and they did their last sale a few years ago and haven't seen anything from them since. But around 2010, they made a name for themselves in New York because they started doing these auctions, and everybody was going, "What are they talking about?" All these fakes, and they were getting big money for things. And I'm going to show you one of the pieces they sold for a lot of money in a minute. But this is what their sale looked like. And again, all very rare types: ding pieces, rare carvings, rare inkstones, rare bronzes, rare cloisonne, all this. These are all copies. These were all reproductions and fakes, and you know it because of the prices that were realized. So if you see an auction house and you're thinking of bidding with them, look at their prices realized, and then go over and do a little checking. Check at Christie's, check at Sotheby's, check at Bonham's, and see what that type of thing actually brings. And if you see something that they'd sold in a previous sale for $1,000 that sells down the street, literally in this case, from Brooklyn to Rockefeller Center, or the Avenue of the Americas at Sotheby's, you'll see that the prices are just ridiculously low. All right, and here's a case where they really got someone. All right, this was supposedly a Qinlong vase that they sold it it's hard to say, $470,000. And here's a picture of it, okay? And this is a really poor quality piece of porcelain. The decoration is absolutely below mediocre. It's absolute crud. This weird rainbow pattern that got painted on the handles, the way the birds are done, the way the trees are done, it's just absolute rubbish. And it sold for $470,000 to some poor soul. All right. This was also at a time when a lot of buyers in China were not aware that auction houses in America were setting them up. They didn't know that auctioneers here, working with Chinese nationals, were getting container loads of goods shipped over to the United States. There were a couple of dozen auction houses initially in it, and then it grew and grew. As a matter of fact, when I ran a live auction house for 18, 20 years with a partner. And we had, toward the end, when we were slowing down the auctions and getting away from them, we actually had some of these guys approach us saying, would you sell this stuff? And they had the stuff in the backs of vans, enough to do a whole auction in one van. They had a pile of stuff. It was unbelievable. And it was all fakes. And we said no, but this was back around 2002 or 3, early. And they went after local auction houses to do it. And what happened was a lot of the auction houses wouldn't take the stuff, so they just started their own. And it was this kind of thing. And there's one of these Yuan type jars, and it looks pretty good. It's well done. They make these by the thousands. And it sold for $4,250, and as a decoration, it's worth about $150. But somebody thought they got themselves an amazing buy. That's the problem with it. And this is another auction house that just has slews of fakes and copies, just ridiculous. All extreme rarities: Xuandi moon flasks, Xuandi stem cups with iron red, Yuan double gourds, on and on and on. In any collection of this caliber, were it authentic, would never make it to this auction house, okay? It would all go straight to New York. New York auction houses or London auction houses would be thrilled to death to have it. And the things, if real, would have brought millions. And as you can see here, they didn't. So as I said, when you come to an auction that looks a little too good to be true, check their past auctions. See what the thing's brought, and then go the extra step and take the descriptions and go over to one of the legitimate auction houses at New York, Sotheby's, Christie's, Bonhams, Doyle's, good auction house, or check iGavel even, and just check and see what the real examples brought. And what you're going to find is the pieces invariably are fakes because they sold for pennies on the dollar. Because all the smart people in the world look at these things quickly, they quickly discount them and move away from them. All right? So always keep that in mind. If it's too good to be true, it isn't. And this was a case of something that looked too good to be true that sold last fall. It was supposed to be a Qianlong period tea dust glazed vase. This particular auction house gets them. They seem to have an endless supply of them. It sold for $500 because it's modern. But they listed it as a Qing Dynasty vase and the Qianlong tea dust, and they've got it in the description. There's the mark on it and so forth, and clearly not authentic. And it sold for just $500 to somebody on one bid. All right, somebody got stuck with it. And then you have this, the reproductions Xuandi jar, market period no less. And we all know, if you've been around or you've watched any of the big auction houses, you all know that these routinely sell in the 7 figures. Okay, that's what they sell for, in the millions. And this one went for $15,000. So what does that tell you? It tells you that this auction house misrepresented this. It's a fake, and somebody got stuck with it. That's all it has to tell you. And it goes on and on. Here's another piece that same auction house sold, or double gored underglazed red piece that should have brought, $80,000, $100,000, ended up selling for $1,400. Here's another one, the Yuan jar that we talked about last week that was coming up. It has since sold for $2,000. The last real one that matched this precisely was sold at Christie's, and it sold for $1 million. All right, and then you have this, the Xuandi plate, obvious fake, if you've seen enough of them. But, a $600 to $900 estimate for a plate that should have sold for in the mid 6 figures to $1 million. All right. That's all you need to know. Ditto for this, Yuan double gourd. Ditto for that, the Young Low iron metal form Islamic pot should have brought in the millions, ended up selling for $1,600. And then you have the bronzes, the problem of bronzes. I'm just going to warn you that nearly every bronze you see of this type, these gilt bronzes that turn up on Liveauctioneers, Invaluable, or whatever, are fakes. They're all copies. They're copying these by the trainload. They're stamping them out like cookies. All right, and this is just a classic example. And this one got off for $15,000, even though it has a few elements that an amateur would know instantly by looking at it is problematic. All right, here they've highlighted stamps and seals and so forth to make it look important. But when you pull it over, there's something that's very obvious on this piece. There, maybe there's a better shot of it. Hold on. Okay, they don't have it on this one. But anyway, what it is if you look at the low edges on these bead-edged Tibetan bronzes, they've taken to, and they may not continue doing this, but they add wear to the high points of these little beads that run along here. But you don't see the same type of legitimate wear anywhere else on the piece. You just don't see it, and that's not how these are. If they have a little bit of wear here, they have a lot of wear elsewhere. They tended to get worn. And it sold for $15,000. This one sold for $30,000. This one has the better picture of the beadwork, and I want to show this to you because it'll really illustrate. There's the imperial mark on the bottom. Here's a picture of the base plate, which obviously doesn't look that old to me. Shouldn't to anybody else. There's the face. Tiny bits of wear, tiny bits of banging around here. The surface isn't very smooth on it, but the beadwork is very telling. Here it is. This is the picture I wanted to share. All right. If you look at this, and you see this on fakes of bronzes all the time. It isn't just with this auction house. There was some coming up at an auction house called Annie's that have the same thing. These high points of wear across here and across here, but nowhere else. All right. You have a bang on the hand there for some reason. But when you look at the whole piece, all right, and then you have this. This is supposed to be lapis powder in the hair. It isn't. It's just crap. But when you look at this piece in its entirety, you recognize there's something very wrong when it comes to wear. It has wear on a few little spots, high points on the noses and all that. Nothing really on the fingers or the hands. The folds, if you look at the folds carefully in the robes, they're sort of sloppy and they're not crisp. They don't flow. All right, it's a fake. But this convinced a few people, and someone shelled out $30,000 for it. All right, and then we come over here. This is an auction house called Find Treasure. They're in Miller Place, New York. A lot of these auction houses that sell fakes seem to be located, curiously, a lot of them in the northeastern United States, New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts. We have several in Massachusetts that I'm aware of. We're going to talk about one of them in a minute. The other one is a company called Altair that's been under federal investigation. And you see a lot of auctions in the South, down in the central and southern United States, into Georgia, as we've discussed many times, and in California. Southern California and California has a bevy of auction houses, and to be honest, I don't trust one of them. All right, other than Bonham's in San Francisco, I trust them. But all right, and here is a piece that's in this sale. This is a sale from Find Treasure, and this is supposed to be a Yongchen, a blue and white mallet vase sort of. Here it is with that overdone heaped in pile effect all over it. Has a single bid, a $5,000 to $8,000 estimate for $2,000, and you always have to question who left that bid. It is not a Yongchen vase, and this one they claim belonged to this guy named Mr. John Smith. And John Smith was a person, I don't know who he was. They have a photograph of him in some of the listings, the way the big auction houses do it. And the problem is that this guy died about 50, 70 years ago or longer, and this piece is brand new, so I don't think it probably belonged to him. All right, okay, here's another John Smith piece, a chin-lung marked, sort of Buddhist style, over-the-top stem cup, and this is supposed to be the original owner of this piece, according to them, and there's a whole write-up on them and all this. The problem is that the estimate is $5,000 to $6,000 when it should be, $100,000 to $150,000. He's only got one bid, and it's just a totally ridiculous thing. But that's the kind of thing, because the major auction houses include pictures all the time of famous collectors, but they're people you recognize. If John Smith owned this collection, nobody's ever heard of him that I'm aware of, and it would be a major collection. And again, you have this kind of thing that they claim belonged to him. There's his picture, is this coral red. They call it gem red. It's supposed to be coral red, Famille Rose bowl done during the Yuan period. And if you look at this thing, it's just a horrible piece of porcelain. It's badly drawn. It looks like it was almost stenciled on and then just painted in. The enameling is just way too even. It looks like it was done with a spray paint gun. And this sold for $3,750 to somebody, thinking they were probably thinking, I just scored a $700,000 bowl. They didn't. And this one was another one that was sold by this auction house. They did a couple of auctions involving this John Smith guy, or purportedly his. And you have this Ming vase. They call it a Ming Chen Huanian System Blue and White. I don't know what that means. I think it was written by somebody that had limited English-speaking skills, I suspect. But at any rate, this is brand new. And John Smith there was nobody named John Smith from the late 1800s ever owned that. And then we get over to this auction house. Here's another one. And I'm not doing it just saying that these are all the ones you have to watch out for. You have to watch out for a lot more than this. But these are active auctions right now, and they following the same pattern that we've seen over and over and over and over again with people selling fakes. And when you open this up here, you have it. You have first, right off the top, you've got this extremely rare type of jade and bird pendants, and then you have Longquan censers that are brand new with $8,000 to $20,000 estimates. You have a Guanyu water jarlet with a $2,000 to $5,000 estimate. It's a blatant copy. A piece of pig jade pendant. And the last authentic one of these that sold at auction was in the Irving collection. It brought $2 million. And so on. She's not very big on descriptions about making any claims about age on any of this stuff, but it's fairly obvious that unless somebody had collected all of these and then just decided to dump them all, and she's a complete fool and doesn't know what she's doing, you can just forget it. And here she says, though, in this one, she declares this to be a Ming Dynasty piece. Vase, Chinese, Ming Dynasty, mark of the Zhuande. Okay, it's not. This is brand new. This is a brand new modern piece. And as we all know, were it authentic, yeah, it would bring a lot of money. All right, but this is the type of stuff you see in these repro auctions. All right, here's another piece from this same group, Annie. She's got this titled and described down below as being Ming. It isn't Ming. It's brand new. And if you've seen bronzes, a lot of you will know right away, this is just a bad bronze. But she's giving it the old college try at Annie's. And it's got a bid at $7,000, which is rather hard to believe, to be perfectly honest. And then you have this Yamantaka Tibetan gilt bronze. It is also a copy. And interestingly, it's got the same exact. Maybe these came from the same factory. I don't know. But this one, you notice here, the beadwork. Exact same wear as the ones we just looked at that were sold at the other auction house. All the high points are worn down, and then up here there's virtually no wear anywhere else, not on the elbows, nowhere else. The casting is completely mediocre. The face is weird, and the only place of wear is on the left hand, on one of the left hands of the figure. Okay, but this is clearly a new copy, and it's up to $9,500, or has a bid from $95,000, maybe from somebody, friend of the auctioneer, who's trying to give encouragement or something. And here you have this Yuan style jar, dragon jar, again another Yuan piece, if authentic, $800,000 to $1.2 million anyway. And one bid, it's got an estimate of $3,700 to $12,000, which is absurd. It's a $150 piece of porcelain for decoration. You can make a nice lamp. All right, and then we found this auction house, and again, the pattern. Starting with jades, you start to see a pattern with all this stuff. A bunch of jades come in, and then you get into some metals, a few mirrors, and then some incense burners based on some well-known types with estimates that would be in line if the pieces were authentic. And then you have the seeded bronzes and more of these figural bronzes, and on and on. And if these pieces were authentic, a major auction house would be thrilled to have them. But alas, they're not, so here they are. Here you have a Kangxi marked white dragon vase that's brand new with a $2,000 to $2,500 estimate. And it just goes on and on and on, all right? So the idea is that when you're looking through these sales, if you come across these sales that look like packaged, they look like a lot of other sales you've seen, that shouldn't be. And the reason is because they are all fakes. Okay, it's just as simple as that. This is a vase this is strange though. It's described as a Qianlong Marken period Famille Rose vase. It's not Famille Rose. And this is TL Auctions. And in their descriptions, they don't put anything other than dimensions. I thought that was rather hilarious. They don't put anything in there. And in their condition report, they should have said conditions, not condition. And the conditions report is we attempt to catalog every lot correctly, and we'll attempt to point out any defects, but have no responsibility for any error or omissions. Okay, this is a brand new copy, and it's got a $2,000 to $2,500 estimate on it, and he didn't do a description, so he didn't even describe it. Here he did the same thing. Again, simply dimensions. That's his description. Because he can't say, he doesn't want to say that it's new, and he doesn't want to put in print that it's a repro, all right? But the implication is that it's an antique and this is a collection that's being sold. All right, and then we come over here. This auction house is actually in Massachusetts. This is in Westboro. They, as I recall, they had another name before, but this time it's Cloudswood. They have no auction facility. We Googled them, and they're in some sort of warehouse out there. It's an industrial area. Exceptional Chinese ceramics and works of art. And here, again, you see lots of the bronzes, then the jades, then the paintings. They're sort of mixing it up a bit. And then you see, copies of snuff bottles. But one of the things they do, and you see this with some of these guys that sell fakes, is that they do sprinkle in instantly recognizable authentic things. They're usually later Qing pieces to try to make you think that this is, they're part of a larger collection of better things as encouragement. Because here you have a sort of nice little Kangxi Femi-Vert dish, and you have this 18th century export plate with a very high estimate on it, $600 to $800. It's a $120 dish. But he probably doesn't really want to sell it. He's just using it to sort of salt the auction. This is a vase that was bought at Doyle's a few years ago. They just listed it as late Qing, and I'm not sure it was, but it sold for, I think, $800 or something. And this was a vase that they got from a Christie's sale. They bought a pair of these, actually, for $1,100. They took one of them, and maybe sold it elsewhere before, and now put it in here. But you'll notice, other than those, everything else are sort of these over-the-top, very, very fancy pieces. And then down here, you've got paintings. And some of the names on the paintings are a little bit amazing. And then you, again, get back to extreme rarities, double-gourd Yuan jars, Ming moon flasks, Sung-type Guan pieces, on and on and on. All of these are copies. Those might have a little age, this Famille Rose pair of vases, but I'm not convinced. And you go down here, and you get back into jades and more porcelain. And as you can see, it just doesn't end. It just is endless. Okay, these are all copies. All right, and this is one of the pieces. It's in the Cloudswood sale. And I wanted to point out something on it: the use of stickers. A lot of these fakers have been printing stickers and getting hold of stickers and receipts and creating provenance now for several years. The first time I saw a lot of stickers show up on things was when the Sung giwares, those brownish cafe-colored giware pieces, started flooding into the U.S. market. And they were typically being offered in groups of four, or 4 or 5 of them would appear at one auction house, or 6 or 7. And we saw it happen in upstate Washington. We saw it happen in upstate New York. We saw it happen in Maine at an auction house. We saw it happen in an auction down in Texas. And the deal is that they do very well because they're very convincing. But they can be bought in Shanghai. They can be bought in Jingdezhen for about $15, $20 a piece if you just want a sample of one just for the fun of it. But they were selling for $15,000, $8,000, $20,000, $40,000, and they're all brand new. But they had Sphinx labels on them, and they had labels from major galleries in London back in the 20s and 30s, and people accepted them. The problem was I looked at one of them, I looped it, and it had laser dot printing on the label. So it was sort of a problem. They also fabricate sales receipts of famous collections like the Clarks and this sort of thing. The problem is that very often they mess up the date, and they have him buying the stuff decades after he had been dead. So you want to watch out for that. So don't believe stickers on anything unless you have a lot of other corroborating information, just as an aside. All right, and then they also have this this late 20th century Qianlong style vase. They have it listed as Qing. It's not. It's a modern piece, but again, it's in that sea of other things. And this is a company, another auction house that we see fairly often, and they're in West Covina, California. This is one of the Californian auction houses, and I honestly don't think there's a legitimate auction house in the entire state outside of Bonham's. This is Paulings, and when you get into their sales and take a look, it all looks so familiar all over again. Jades, and this guy claims to have some really rare jades, Western Zhao jades with this was a past sale. Excuse me. There's one coming up too, and this was a past sale where he had a Western Zhao jade that he couldn't get $600 for when it should have brought $40,000. And on and on. A lot of jades they're purporting to be from antiquity, like this Han funerary set here with the eyes and forming a mask. It's totally new. It's just absolute bunk. Sold for $2,400, and some mediocre cloisonné, and then all these yellow seals. None of them are real. And then you have things like Hongshan culture mask appliques for clothing, for uniforms. Those are unbelievably rare, and Hongshan jades do not turn up often. We all know that the Hongshan jade that was in the Irving collection sold for $2 million, and even Christie's couldn't decide if that was real or not. They were very back and forth on it. And but the people that know the stuff cold saw it and chased it up. And here you have a lot of this kind of stuff that just simply got ignored or passed or just didn't go anywhere. And here are more and more of these seals. When you see seals like this with these yellow seals, and they all look remarkably alike and all that, even if you don't know anything about Chinese art, you should know that looks a little weird, as do these seas of bronzes. All right, a lot of these passed. All right, because nobody bought them because they didn't believe them to be authentic, but they do get through auction houses. All right, and here's another one. This is is this the upcoming sale? No, this is another past sale. They did, again, rare jades, rare looking types of cloisonné, Han patinated bronzes, all these great rarities. Another Hongshan culture piece. This guy's had two or three Hongshan culture pieces. Here's another one in a couple of sales. And I don't think the major auction houses have had a dozen in the last 20 years. So you really want to be leery. And then when you get down here, you notice he's claiming to have sold paintings by Qi. All right, for $700, no less. All right. These are being copied. Here's more Qi. His paintings, as we all know, bring six figures. They bring a fortune, and they're reproducing and painting those, throwing them on containers and shipping them to America to be sold at auction. And pretty much everything I saw on this page was a reproduction of some great rarity. So again, when you see a sea of great rarities and really amazing stuff, immediately be suspicious if it's not a major auction house. Okay. And here's another thing from Paulings. That couldn't even get off the ground for $2,000. It was supposed to be a Ming plate. And here are some more of these paintings that turned up. This is another sale that this Paulings outfit did. This one was supposed to be part of a collection of some guy, and they included his pictures in it. A Guy Mayer gallery. And I don't know who he was. These might have been leftover pieces from his collection. They weren't very good. They didn't qualify for a major sale. So what the auctioneers will do is they'll get a bunch of these pieces in that are from an estate. A tiny bit of their auction is from an estate, and then they fill the estate. They load what's called loading. They load the estate with duplicitous stuff, hoping the few legitimate things will wash over any concerns of these. But they obviously didn't, because none of them sold for any real money. They all sold for a few $100s here and there. All right. But that's sort of the run of it, is that you got to use a logic test and look at it and say, you know, here you have a picture of a painting supposed to be by Shi, a longevity peach painting. He was known for doing these kinds of things. And you look at it and say, well, wait a minute, $800 to $1,200 estimate for one of the great masters of the 20th century? Of course not. Of course not. Not possible. And it's certainly not possible that it went for $600. All right. So when you see an auction that contains these kind of things, if the auctioneer is lying about this, he's lying about other things. If the auctioneer is evasive and vague about dating of one thing, he's going to be evasive and vague and dishonest about others. And if he's got estimates that are pennies on the dollar to what they really sell for, if authentic, again, run for your life. All right. Gravitate towards auctions by looking at their previous auctions, see how they did. Do the prices that they got seem to be in line with the real ones? You have to do that next step. You always have to do the next check when you're trying to figure out something with these guys, if you don't have enough ability to determine whether or not an item is a fake or not from the beginning. At least go and check with one of the other auction houses to see what the things sell for when they're real. And that'll help guide you in whether or not you want to participate in an auction with these people. But always remember, if they're minor league nobody auction houses, they won't be getting major league collections from anyone that has one. They're just not going to do it. They're going to do it through the right venue. All righty, and keep all these things in mind, and just be really careful out there. Okay, all right. Use your head. Use common sense. All right, and thanks for watching. I just went on a little bit. I apologize, and I hope you're all doing well. All right, bye-bye.